I've been doing the podcast for a couple months now. I think like 18 episodes have been released, and it's really got me thinking about what to do with my career. Maybe that's not the best thing to be saying on a public forum for my current job, but I'm realizing that I am kind of at a crossroads. As folks who've listened know, I have a master's in marketing. I got that in 2016. It's taken me pretty far. Look at me, Stacey. I'm at GMAC.
The dream job.
Right. But I definitely want a little bit more. And I don't know, honestly, I've just been feeling really inspired by the podcast and have been playing around with the idea of maybe going back to school. So I wanted to talk to you because I trust you, you're smart, and you've never steered anyone wrong.
I don't know if I'd go so far as anyone, but in general, when we're talking about tests and business school, hopefully I know what I'm talking about. I love the meta-ness of the conversation that we're having right now, by the way, because you've been putting together and so focused on helping other people figure out what they want to do in terms of their careers and their grad school journey. And now you're like, you know what? This might just apply to me too. So I have some questions for you. I'm going to kind of treat this like you're somebody who's, called me up and been like, hey, I have questions. I'm thinking about grad
Yes.
school. What should I do?
Which is essentially what we are doing.
Which is exactly,
that's
what I'm saying. I love the meta. And we're not, there's no script here, people. There's no, we're just having a conversation. So you've got the master's in marketing. What you're thinking about is that you might need some flavor of an MBA at this point.
Yeah. My program was great. I'll sing its praises all day, every day for the rest of my life. But there are some things that I'm realizing that maybe I don't have the foundations enough, I guess, like some finance, accounting, statistic-y kind of stuff, to be very specific and
For sure.
embarrassed.
But that is a significant difference between a marketing type degree and a broader MBA type degree. Yeah, for sure.
And I definitely want to get into a leadership position. I feel like I've been an individual contributor for pretty much my entire marketing career. I've had one job where I was a people manager to a pretty large team, actually, to 4 people. And I really did feel like I was sort of out of my depth. And I don't know if an MBA would help me in that regard too, or an executive MBA.
Yeah. So that was my next question for you, because you are, not to be whatever, but you're later in your career. So a lot of
It's true.
MBA
It's
programs.
true.
A lot of MBA. So first of all, business degree programs in general, they all require some amount of working experience. They're not just going to take you straight from undergrad, because a big part of what people are bringing into the classroom experience and what they're contributing is their work experience. For regular MBA programs, average number of years of working experience is usually maybe 4 to 5 years for most programs. For executive MBA programs, these are programs designed for people who are later, who are further into their career. Often you've got people who are coming in with like 10 to 20 years of work experience. They're almost always part-time programs. And I don't know of any that are full-time programs. So the idea for an executive MBA is typically, this is somebody who's later in their career. Their workplace might actually be sponsoring them and even paying for the degree or for part of it. They're usually continuing to work and they're coming together with their cohort in person, maybe once or twice a month. So you might even be doing this, taking a program that's not in your city and flying into the city once a month to go to your program and be there for 3 days in a row or something like that. This is often why this is sponsored by, or at least endorsed by, your current company, because they're giving you the time to do this, to do these periodic connections. And then the rest of it you're doing in a hybrid way or in an async way from wherever you and all of your classmates are living and working. And the requirements in terms of coming into this are a little bit different. And in particular, they're a little bit different in terms of the test that you might take for your admissions purposes. That's
Yes.
what we're going to talk about. But in general, in terms of what you're describing, this is an appropriate time to then, given your goals, this is an appropriate time to consider, would another grad school degree actually help you to get that foundation that you need? And I would say not just to move up in marketing, but possibly longer term, you'll want to expand that and be moving up further into management in a company and broadening beyond marketing. And so again, something like an MBA or an executive MBA would help you to do that.
the thing that I've wrestled with is like, does this invalidate my previous degree? Like, do I really want to go back to school, spend the money, or, maybe GMAC, if you're listening, you can fund my executive MBA. But in all seriousness, like that is the first question that I have to sort of wrap my head around. It's just like accepting it.
Yeah. And I would say these are different degrees that you're discussing. So this doesn't in any way invalidate your prior education any more than it would invalidate your undergrad degree either. The question with any type of degree, and in particular graduate degrees, which are so expensive, the real question you're asking yourself is, what's my ROI here? Why am I looking to do this? What is it going to get me? And how is it going to help me to get to the goals that I've set for myself? And compare that to, okay, if I didn't do it, the graduate school route, is what I want to do still possible? In business, usually it is. You usually don't have to have the graduate, you absolutely have to have the graduate degree in business. But would having the degree smooth the route? Would having the degree make it easier? Would also help me to feel more confident in the skills and the baselines that I have. And I'll say too, particularly if it's been 5 or more years since you last got any type of degree, the business world, the working world is getting more and more numbers focused and quant focused and stats and data analytics and being able to read this stuff and analyze it and think about it and figure out what to do about it. Much more so than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So it can also be the case that this is simply like the state of the art, 10 years ago is not what it is today. And so this is part of that as well. If that were all it was, if you wanted to just stay in marketing and mostly do the same kind of role and you were more like, oh, but I really feel like I need a refresher on like marketing-based data analytics, okay, then there's probably something you could do there as maybe a certification thing or a continuing education thing.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what
Yeah.
if I want to be a CMO?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't need to go back to
That's setting
school?
your sights higher. And then, yeah, something like this might very well help you. Again, both in terms of giving your resume that cachet or that credential, but also in terms of you feeling like you've really got the foundation, the basis to make that happen.
Okay. Well, feels good. Like, I appreciate that. So putting that aside, I'm also thinking about the time commitment. So I have a job, I have a very successful podcast, I have family, friends, art projects that I still am very involved in. Which degree would be the most flexible, I guess, is also something that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And so for somebody who generally speaking wants to keep their career going, you're definitely wanting to you want to look at a part-time program one way or the other, whether that's a regular MBA
Definitely.
program or an executive MBA program. And I'll say 15 years ago, I think people kind of looked a little bit down on part-time MBA programs. I don't think that exists anymore. I think everybody's well aware that lots of people want to continue in their careers and don't want to take 2 years out of their career to pursue a graduate degree. And so I wouldn't worry about that aspect of things anymore. It's more a question of where are you in your career? How far are you into your career? And therefore, which type of degree is more appropriate. So generally speaking, if somebody's still within like the 5 to 10 years into their career thing, you're probably going to be leaning more towards a part-time regular MBA. Once you start to get above 10, maybe above 12 to 15, you're definitely looking at executive MBA. And then there's that kind of gray area in between where you could go either way. And so at that point, you want to just go take a look at go start doing some research. So have you thought about any actual programs or looked at any schools' websites yet or anything like that?
Honestly, no. I just did a podcast recording with Yale School of Management, specifically talking about their executive MBA. So
That's a
like
great way to do
obviously
research, I got to say.
this podcast is actually just like a whole endeavor to find myself, to find my career goals. So everyone is just sort of a pawn in my journey of self-discovery. But no, I haven't. I mean, I know of them because I work at GMAC and I talk to candidates and schools all the time. I know what the big ones are. So
What I would say
that's
there
it.
is literally just pick 2 schools that you're like, that sounds interesting. Like I would potentially be interested in learning more about that school and that school's program. So maybe Yale is one of them.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
go on their website.
the first thing I thought of when you said that was I'm a theater guy. So what do you think of first? You think of New York. So then I was thinking about NYU. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a
Yeah.
place I could start.
Yeah. And so just go and look at their program and just start poking around on the website and see what is this program? How is it organized? Do I feel like this could actually fit into my career Given all my other commitments, but also obviously both your personal and professional people around you would need to like know this is happening and would be themselves need to be willing to give you that flexibility to be able to do this because obviously it is a big, a large amount of work. Start to go look at the program from the point of view of how do they construct it? What are they expecting from you in terms of are you going to need to move to the city or can it be something where you're flying in once a month or however that would work? And also just look at their actual curriculum. So what are they teaching you? What are you going to come out of this with? And does that list of things fit into where you might want to take your career if CMO is in your future or whatever that might be, right? But is this the list of things? Does it seem like a good list of things that would actually help you to develop those skills for those multiple possible careers?
So should I be thinking about the industries I'd want to be a CMO in?
Potentially, that could be part of it. Generally speaking, though, like if you're going for something, if you know you want to be a CMO in general, you're going to need a lot of the same kinds of skills, regardless of the specific industry that you're in. It is also possible if you know that you want to be in entertainment, if you know that you want to be in manufacturing, if you know, whatever it is that you want to be. There are certain schools sometimes that will specialize in or just be close to those areas because of where they're physically located. And so that could influence part of a choice as well. So you mentioned New York, obviously, for theater type things. If it's other kinds of entertainment, that might be a school out in LA, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess I should do some research.
Just look and see. And this isn't, you're not choosing a school. You're just starting to get a sense of how do these programs work? What does this look like from both a practical perspective and from a what am I going to learn perspective? Go look at 2 or 3 different schools, spend like, an hour and a half on each school and just start to see like, does this make me excited? Does this make me want to go look at 2 more schools after I look at these 2 schools? Or is this me being like, oh no, 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 I don't want to do this. And that just subjective evaluation will help you to see, am I just curious about this, but I'm not really that invested? Or, yeah, once I start to get more concrete about this and it starts to feel a little more real, does that actually excite me more and I want to keep going?
And another thing I'm thinking about is maybe I want to take a test, see what my score is, and then look at schools. Like, there's part of me that's like, let me just see what I get on the executive assessment,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
determine my next steps. Is that the wrong
Yeah,
way to think about it?
just to see. I don't think that's the wrong way to go about it at all. I think it's very normal and reasonable to be thinking like, how much of a lift is it really going to be if I have to take a test? So let's talk about the if I have to take a test piece of it. So some schools are test optional. They don't require you to take a test. If you're looking at a regular MBA versus an executive MBA program, the chances are somewhat higher for regular MBA that a test would be required. For executive MBA programs, a lot of them do still require tests, but your chances are a little bit better that for the particular programs you're looking at, you might not have to take a test. I know that your organization offers free practice tests for the GMAT. For the EA, I think the practice tests are paid, but there are some free practice questions. So I would dip your toe in, like do free stuff first, right? So dip your toe in just by trying some of those question types to get a sense of what's on this test, how are the questions forms, what is this thing like? I will also say just as I don't know, to calm people down a little bit because standardized tests are stressful. There is a big difference between the GMAT and the EA in terms of how the programs use it, and therefore in terms of the level of score that they're looking for. So the GMAT tends to be used for regular MBA programs, and the competition level is kind of crazy at times in terms of number of applications that are coming in. And because people going for a regular MBA are generally earlier in their career, the test has a greater weight and your undergrad grades have a greater weight than they tend to for executive MBA programs. For executive MBA programs, you're looking at people much later in their career. The career itself, the work experience itself is going to be the huge thing that schools really care about. So in that case, if they do require an exam, usually they'll take like the executive assessment and the GMAT so you can make your choice. For the executive assessment, they tend to use it as what I'll call like a threshold exam. They're just looking for you to kind of beat a threshold because they want to make sure that you have enough of a foundation that you're not just going to be drowning from day one, especially on those quantitative topics, the stuff that we were talking about earlier. So there I will say, when you're going and doing this little early research on your schools, go look and see whether they do require an exam. And if they do, see which exams they will allow you to take. If your schools all accept the executive assessment, then it's almost a no-brainer that you do the executive assessment over the GMAT.
Yeah. I mean, internally, and schools often will refer to the executive assessment or the EA as it's more of a readiness tool than a selection tool, where the GMAT, I think, can really identify someone's like academic or quantitative horsepower. The EA really is like
Are
the,
you going to survive in our program?
are
That's
you going to
all. We just
survive?
want to
This
make
is,
sure that you have the baseline level that you need. Yeah.
yeah. So I really appreciate the test from that point of view, regardless of how I feel about testing or tests in general. I like the idea of something that can just get me ready, show I'm serious, but also can hopefully, like I'm hoping to prep for this in 4 weeks.
That's ambitious.
Really?
It's probably going to take you more time. I will say there are a lot of different question types to learn, and you are going to have to brush up on some math and some grammar, so some facts and rules. And you're also doing this while working full time and having other family and friend commitments, right? So,
And the podcast.
yeah, and podcast. Can't forget the podcast. So I will say people often underestimate the amount of time that they will have to study. So yes. And for the executive assessment in particular, the test is short. It's only an hour and a half long, but there are 8 different question types. So you'll have to master like how what are the strategies and how do you address these 8 different question types. There's also just a pool of knowledge that you need on the math side and on the grammar side, depending upon what your strengths and weaknesses are there already or what your baseline level there is already. For a lot of people, particularly who are, 10, 15, 20 years out of undergrad, do you remember how to find common denominators on paper without Excel or a calculator? Do you remember, right? So there are things like that are going to take some time to you'll get it back. It's all stuff you learned once upon a time in your life. But there's some muscle memory, there's some practice there to build it up. And it's not really easily crammable. It's going to just
Yeah.
take some time and doing a little bit every day till your brain starts to click and you're just able to do it without using too much brain power.
So can I sort of like build up to what I'm thinking of as like more legitimate study sessions? Like, can I start with 10 minutes a day for a week and then go up in dosage?
Sure, absolutely. And I would, like I said, I would just dip your toe in. Look for free things. Look for things to start. We have actually an executive assessment starter kit that just kind of gives you an introduction to the basics about the test and how is this test scored and how is it constructed and what are these 8 question types that I was talking about and whatever. So learn the basics about it. You can start to get into some of the more foundational math stuff. Again, just start to get used to doing math on paper again. You've learned this all before. You really did this in middle school and in high school already.
Yeah,
There's
I did.
nothing new on the test that you haven't learned before. You just have to get your brain back into that. I will say the other lift for everybody, unless somebody's still in undergrad while they're taking one of these tests, is that you've fallen out of the habit of how to study. Like, how do you set up a study session? How do you focus for the next 15 or 30 or 60 minutes or however long you decide the study session is? How do you set up your study session? What are you actually going to spend your time doing in that time? And how are you going to be effective and efficient with it?
What I'm thinking of is school where you're given a homework assignment and you're given the questions or you're given the chapters to read or you're given a list of everything that's going to be tested on the exam and you can like refer back to lessons. I don't
Mhm.
have that.
Yeah, and so part of it is if you're going to start to do that, how are you going to do it? There are companies out there like mine who run classes or have books or have different ways that you can prepare for this kind of stuff. Do you want to put together your own study plan, but then that's going to be more mental labor for you? Do you want to, it'll cost less, but it'll be more mental labor. Do you want to go with some established program, somebody who's already put together something, a study plan for you from start to finish? That will be much easier mental labor, but it will cost more.
Yeah. I definitely cannot get myself organized. Typically, I've been a classroom kind of person.
It's good to know that about yourself. That's one of the questions I'll ask people too, is like, how do you prefer to study? Do you want to study on your own? Do you want to have peers in a classroom and a teacher talking to you? Do you want to do one-on-one with a teacher who's talking only to you and not to a classroom of people? And again, different considerations for those as well as different costs. But it's important to know how you best study. It's also the case that this could be different for different topics. Like if you're more of a verbal person, then you might feel fine studying the verbal side of things on your own, but want outside support on the quant side of things, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I've taken 2 GMAT practice exams in the past 8 months, actually real exams, 2 real GMAT exams.
Oh, yeah.
And I was very satisfied with my verbal score, or satisfied in comparison to the other 2.
Yeah, they're different skill sets. You need both of them in your career. They're both equally important. But yeah, it's definitely different skill sets. Okay. So what I'm hearing from you and what we've talked about so far is you are intrigued by this. You've been taking practice tests and real tests. So like this is, you're intrigued by this. Your next step is to go do some research, go look at some school programs, both from the point of view of the practical day to day and can you see this fitting into your life? And in terms of the curriculum and what are they going to teach me? What am I getting? What am I paying for when I get this degree? Do that for a couple of schools. See if that makes you want more, like want to keep going down this path, right? And then if those 2 schools are like, yep, I like this and I want these 2 schools, great. Or go look at 2 more schools, expand the look a little bit to see what's going on. The other thing I would do is now you've got a little bit of a leg up on this compared to most people because you've studied for the GMAT. So the question types are the same on the GMAT and the EA. These 2 exams use the same question types. They're structured a little bit differently in terms of how the scoring works and how the time management works and that sort of thing. It's also the case that I'll say for the EA, because the 2 exams are built for different purposes, the hardest of the hard on the GMAT is harder than it is on the EA. So the EA doesn't go quite to the same heights, if you will, in terms of difficulty level of what you're seeing on the test. The one thing that the EA does have that the GMAT doesn't have is grammar. So if you need to study grammar, that can be a big lift.
Yeah. I mean, despite what anybody thinks listening to me speak on this podcast, grammar is actually a huge strength of mine.
That's
It's
good for you.
probably
Okay.
right. That's the thing that initially drove me to the EA over any other exam. Is because, this is low lift and in some regards plays to my strengths.
Yeah, especially in the verbal section, right? And then on the math section, which is the area that you're more nervous about, like I said, the hardest of the hard doesn't get as hard essentially on the EA. So the next thing I would go do is go try some of the free questions that are on the executive assessment website. We have an executive assessment starter kit on our website, so feel free to go look at that as well.
And just do these without studying. Just do them.
Yeah, just try them and just see what it's all about. It's not about, at this stage, it's not about, can I get these right even? It's just like, let me see what this is about. Let me see what I'm about to be tested on. You'll also be able to see by just doing some questions, you'll be able to see the gaps. What are the things that you already feel pretty good about? And what are the things that are like, ooh, get my work cut out for me in that area? Because that's going to help you too to figure out what you want your study path to be and to help you assess, do I think I can do this on my own? Do I want to do something that's maybe a little bit more expensive but has more support? How do I want to do this? So get that early sense of your strengths and weaknesses. The other thing that you can do, I mentioned earlier that the GMAT has free practice tests available. For the EA, the practice tests aren't free, but they're not super expensive. So you could also buy the practice tests and try one. There aren't a huge number of practice tests, so you might also just want to save them for after you've started studying. You can decide basically, but try the free questions first and then decide whether you want to also try a practice test right now or whether you want to wait a little longer on that.
Okay. Right now?
Yeah, right now, go.